Beautiful job. I know I've talked about her Blue Spring story, I think, in the past. And, I contrast her to Clara Schumann, who both talented pianists, teachers, composers in their own right. And unlike Clara, Louise took the wheel and really made a difference. And that's why I just find her music so inspiring. Our scripture this morning is from the book of Matthew, chapter 7, verses 7 and 8. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be open. And I love this verse. It's one of the most promising declarations in the New Testament. And it inspires a lot of prosperity ministry, and rightfully so. It's also a broad promise. Ask and it will be given. What is it? Salvation, wisdom, help, money? Knock and the door will be opened. The door to what or to where? Heaven, opportunity, a mystery, a way forward, the way out? Humans, being creatures who thrive on certainty, tend to see these words as an assurance of good things, and they undeniably are. But this is why I'm grateful for divine metaphysics, because while, yes, this verse is an affirmation of our role as co-creators in the process of life, divine metaphysics opens our minds to the law of duality. We are indeed powerful. And therefore, what lies behind door number 3, and if you are younger than Gen X, you probably are not going to get this reference. Well, actually, I'll stop. What lies behind door number 3 doesn't depend on Monty Hall or Wayne Brady, depending on how old you are. It depends on us. More specifically, the state we are in. How well we rest within divine law. Not where we'd like to be, but where and how we actually are. There's a powerful duality to co-creation. And as we say before our offering, divine love always has, divine love always will supply my every need. Our declared intent is but one part of the equation. God hears the language of our deepest, truest selves. Hearkening back to the scripture, we may ask with our lips, but we receive based on what's in our hearts, even if it's subconscious. We find what we subconsciously seek. And whatever lies behind the door, we will behold not just with the eyes, but through the lens of this and even this. Last month, I had the chance to catch up with an old friend who'd been standoffish recently, or so it seemed to me. Her retreat right before the holidays seemed out of the blue. I knew I hadn't done anything or said anything wrong because she was the sort to immediately clear the air if it needed to be. And social media didn't reveal much, except there was a downtick to her posting. No good news, but no bad news either. And so I kept the pump primed, sending short thinking of you texts, little memes, a Christmas card, and eventually she came up for air, and I was there. It turns out her company had been bought by a private equity firm, and my friend, who felt like life was settled and arranged, suddenly found herself facing a lot of unknowns. Then her husband got sick. Misery loves company, she said when I asked if that was why she'd retreated. And she added, I wasn't about to do that to the people I love. And with things having settled a bit, she was ready to unpack. And it seemed to be a case of when it rains or pours, just one thing after another. She kind of unpacked with me. And I could understand why she had felt like she needed to retreat or to go into hiding for a while. But because our relationship is based on good faith, I did stick the tip of my nose in. A couple of the items she was wrestling with didn't seem to be about her or her family, her inner circle, really. So when she asked for my thoughts, I offered this. You said something really wonderful earlier. Misery loves company. And you retreated for a while because you didn't want to inflict that misery on the people you love. But what about yourself? You just shared with me a lot of tough things that have happened. Some of them happened to you, but some of these actually just happened near you. And you picked them up and added them to your own list. Oh my God, she said, did I just add them to my own sad state of affairs for the sake of doubling down on my own sad state of affairs? I think you've just touched on another good truth. I said, we humans love to be right, even about our own misery. But if this were a court of law, some of the evidence you brought against yourself should be thrown out. Now, I'm going to tell a story about my parents, both of whom are in spirits. They will forgive me for sharing this, peek into their marriage, but my parents were both school teachers at the same school even. But when they came home at the end of the day, my father would go to his chair with a beer and watch TV, while my mother was in the kitchen cooking for 4 insufficiently grateful people. And sometimes I'd wander in the kitchen as a little boy and I'd find my mother angrily chopping with her knife. More than once, I asked, Mommy, what's wrong? What's right, she'd say. She'd go back to assaulting of vegetables. Later in life, through this scene with my mother, I came to see how in negative states we became myopic. When we feel afraid, our lizard brains look for other things to fear. And that isn't always a bad thing the next time we're lost in the jungle or stranded in open water. But our lizard brains tend to extend this skill to things like loss of control, suspicion, rejection. And then our higher brains start to strategize. And they start to double down. How do I control? How do I identify the untrustworthy? How do I head off rejection? And then whether we mean to or not, as powerful co-creators, we begin to manifest accordingly. A couple of weeks ago, I went to a really awesome exhibit in Northwest DC on Rhode Island Avenue. It's an exhibit of sculptures made entirely of Legos by artist Nathan Sawaya. And the exhibit included actual life-size recreations of polar bears, of Bengal tiger. There was a T-Rex skeleton that would have stretched the length of our aisle here. But there were also some fascinating original works, one of which intrigued me so much that I included it on the cover of your bulletin. There was this man constructed entirely of Legos, tearing himself open. And all these other Lego pieces come spilling out, pieces that were not meant for his own construction. Yet, he's been carrying them around with him anyways. And to what end? It calls to mind a wonderful Buddhist question: what does one do upon coming across broken glass? Gently pick up each shard? Or perhaps one should simply put on shoes? How cool is that? What does one do after coming upon broken glass? Pick up the shards? Or perhaps simply put on shoes? This is such a great exercise because it evokes thoughts from many angles, and I'm actually going to reuse it on Easter Sunday. But this morning, I embrace its reminder that not everything belongs to us. TikToker Annie Gregory has made a name for herself with the phrase, I do not receive this. She didn't coin the phrase, but she's gained a huge following helping people establish personal boundaries when dealing with pushy people like family members, a friend, a colleague, a client. But I, being a metaphysician, I like using that phrase quietly inward, quietly upon myself. I do not receive this. And I encourage you to do so as well. Growing up, I heard so many ministers declare, we have all fallen short of the glory of God. And we have. That's our humanity, our human condition, our human frailty. So when we are led through the world by our highest spiritual selves, our spirit, we are not falling short. But when we walk through the world, when we try to navigate the world through the lens of our human frailty at the fore. We're in survival mode. We need to be in control so we can be safe. We need to be on the lookout for people, places, and things that interfere with that security. And so we begin to collect our misery, our fear, our lack of control wants company to justify itself, if for no other reason. And even if subconsciously we're being vigilant for, as my mom would demand from the kitchen, what's wrong, it's barring us from earnestly seeking and finding what's right. I'm hoping you got a chuckle out of the cartoon I put inside the bulletin. It's a metaphysical point. Its metaphysical point was too good not to include. And at first glance, it's a husband who didn't put a lot of thought into his wife's gift. Also kind of reminded me of my parents' marriage at some point. But for me, it's a great metaphor about life and our personal power. Life gives us a million pieces, and it's up to us to decide what we'll make of them, if anything. In the cartoon, you can see she's mad at her husband for not putting more thought into the gift. She can open the box and she can open the box and every brick can be a reason to substantiate her anger. Such is the power of certainty. But ideally, she can open the box and see nothing but possibility. No matter what her husband's intent or her perception of it, she doesn't even have to use every brick. I do not receive this. Maybe she'll receive that one. When we seek for reasons to support our misery, our anger, our suspicion, our lack of control, we expect to find it behind every door. So it shall be. Such is the power of our certainty. Soon we're left with a million little pieces to construct only what's wrong, nothing to construct what's right. I don't want to assume what's going on in your life right now, but I offer these words for the future use. Perhaps if you find yourself experiencing instability or insecurity at home, your job, within your community, remember, there's a human tendency to see only that condition compounded by another incident, and then another, and then another. We must be wary of this collection becoming habit rather than mindful, because then everything seems certain. And a false certainty arrives with this. About a decade ago, the University of Colorado conducted a psychological experiment. They had subjects hold one of two objects, a remote control or a gun. And they quickly flashed pictures in front of them of other people holding various objects and quickly asked the subjects to identify what they saw. Well, it wasn't a large difference. They consistently found that those holding the gun incorrectly identified others in the photographs as also holding a gun more often. Now, the intent of the study was for gun safety purposes, but when I initially read about this experiment while I was in seminary, I saw a parallel implication. What we carry emotionally, intellectually, it can influence how we perceive external events. Now, if my world has been turned up topsy-turvy, it's only natural that I'm going to dwell on what's gone wrong. Again, that's my survival instinct. And out of vigilance, I'm going to look for the other shoe to drop. That's human nature. But vigilance without hope, without faith, I have suddenly collected an entire shoe closet, only to later find, hey, some of these weren't actually my size. And so during times of heightened but hopeful vigilance, I will often say, I do not receive this. If you think about it, I'm being vigilant about or with my vigilance. Back in 2012, country artist Gary Allan wrote a song with some great lyrics. They are, I saw you standing in the middle of the thunder and lightning. I know you're feeling like you just can't win, but you're trying. It's hard to keep on keeping on, and when you're being pushed around, don't even know which way is up. You just keep spinning down, round, down. Every storm runs out of rain. Just like every dark night turns into day, every heartache will fade away. Just like every storm runs runs out of rain. Maya Angelou loved this line so much that during COVID, she encouraged everyone, or she declared that everyone should have a sign printed with that on it. Every storm runs out of rain. There's hope in that recognition. My friends, life is assembled from a million little pieces. You don't have to use every single one. For the ones that land at your feet, ponder first a good use for it before picking it up. Seek the good ones. Mindfully seek the good ones, and do so with a hopeful heart.